Hello and welcome to the SPMA 3P25 Sports Sponsorship Reflective Account. I'm Eddie Koppoe. This year we're going to be trying to do the reflective account as a sort of podcast, and hopefully it'll just be easier for myself to just convey certain reflections from the week. So anyway, let's get straight into it. So as you may know, I'm also taking the 2P91 PR and Communications class as well. And there's also already been some reflections on those. So some of these things might be sort of repeating myself, so bear with me. But throughout the year, it'll be interesting to see the sort of crossover between the two courses and how they both relate to each other and how they are different. So some of these things you may have heard already, but hopefully throughout the video we'll be exploring different topics. So how do you feel about taking this course? As I've mentioned previously, I haven't studied anything like this before, so it's all quite new to me. It's all very, very exciting. So, and especially taking sports marketing last year, I'm looking forward to how this class turns out and sort of building off my knowledge from last year. So what do you say about to your friends? So this is perhaps a bit more interactive than other subjects. We're going to be doing an asset inventory and a presentation as well, and that sort of bodes well with my style of learning. In that essence, that's something that sits well with me, and I think is a good part of the course. So as I may have mentioned before, the greatest advice I can give is just to be brave in discussions in class, and kind of speak up. We'd all sort of follow different sports, so hearing different perspectives from different walks of life and different sports is a way for all of us to learn and for all of us to get better. And finally, see myself as a practitioner in sport marketing. So part of the reason why I'm here in my exchange is to kind of carve out where I want to go in life, and so exploring all these avenues has been good so far. So I'm definitely looking in the sport marketing management kind of sector. Already kind of seeing things like business proposals for sponsorship deals and those sort of things. All kind of is interesting to me. So going into a job like that is definitely something I could see myself doing. So of course, because we just have one class a week, it's just kind of easier to lump the first 2 weeks in together. The content and the reflections are all quite similar to each other. So across the 2 weeks, we looked at things like global sponsorship spend, cost of advertisement, return on investment, which was quite an interesting discussion in class that we had, when we'll be exploring later in this podcast. Sponsor fit, and whether business or what decisions they should make in choosing between partnering with two different companies and which kind of fits best for them, and the availability of assets for the business. So what do they have to essentially sell or market to people who want to advertise or enter into a sponsorship deal with them. So let's look at a few things from this week. So one of the first sort of reflections actually came from 2P91. The argument is made that consumers are watching traditional advertisement on traditional sport media platforms. And then in class this week, we discussed that sponsorship spend was well over 60 billion. So I was kind of looking into sort of what are sort of networks or TV trying to do to break the barriers, and then it seems to be there's quite a few sort of new strategies or digital innovations to keep consumers interested. So one we talk about quite a lot is engagement with fans during broadcasts. So figures according to Nielsen is each time a Facebook post about the NFL game broadcast is shared during 50 minutes prior to kickoff, 1,000 additional viewers tune into that first minute of play. So we talked about a lot the way fans can use social media to kind of either discuss things with each other or kind of voice their opinions. But also it can be used in the other way with social media, sort of using that platform to entice fans to tuning to certain sporting events. So looking at this, we've got things now like smartwatch and fitness clothing, and there seems to be new demands for both style and advanced technology. With the things like I said, Fitbit, those things, kind of people can kind of keep up to date with their sort of progress, and it's a lot more interactive than other forms of sort of media or monitoring fitness. So that's been used as well. Advanced video technology. So as we've seen in many sports, kind of this real-time athlete data, enhanced replay. We have 360 cameras that can show you sort of one play or one shot from sort of different angles, 3D replays, and that can sort of be like a huge thing for things like let's take the X Games, sort of I don't follow it too closely, but something like a ski jump or something like that. You can kind of see the height, speed, force, and landing, and all those things are kind of available, which makes things a little bit more interesting for the viewer. So virtual reality is kind of this two-pronged attack. So now it kind of gives the average person the ability to kind of be in an environment that a professional can kind of perhaps see themselves in, like the picture below, kind of with that almost pretending you're a quarterback, and it's a different way to kind of experience the game. And to the picture next to it, there's certain platforms now are being created where you can put on a I think Octus Rift they're called, and you can actually sit courtside to a game, or you can choose your seats. So you essentially can be taken to the stadium from the comfort of your own home. And then sort of the other way it works is in the training and development of athletes. They can now use these things, and it creates loads of sort of marketing and sponsorship opportunities for different companies to come in and kind of use the rise in VR to their advantage, and get sport to kind of jump on the back of that as well. And so sort of they finally start cutting out the middleman, the media middleman. So there is so athletes are now looking to avoid traditional media communications and kind of be directly involved with their fans. So Uninterrupted, I think it was a site created by LeBron James. It kind of gives the athletes sort of direct communication with their fans. I think it's interesting to see whether that will, by just the natural growth of that, then turn into mainstream media, and then perhaps it won't be as effective. So be interesting to see whether the growth of that is sort of reflected on that. So we discussed about certain agencies trying to get out of their sponsorship deals, and through sort of my learning this week, trying to figure out why, and perhaps Team Sky and their cycling is an example of maybe a reason why. So going into 2020, Sky no longer have a deal with 21st Century Fox, which of course is Rupert Murdoch's owned company. Even though Fox did bid, there was certain links to that they didn't bid higher because the Team Sky cycling team will be being investigated by the UK anti-doping agency. So kind of not wanting to be associated with a certain brand or certain controversy could be one reason why companies don't want to sponsor, don't want to be sort of seen alongside with that. And we saw it with Emirates, FIFA, and Sony. When FIFA were being investigated for all sorts of things, to do with sort of underhanded deals and whatnot. Both Emirates and Sony sort of pulled away and didn't want to be associated with that. So I think it's quite, with that reason being, it kind of makes sense why certain deals would end perhaps earlier than they should, or earlier than certain one side wanted them to. So in class, the figures that was put forward in terms of return of investment, that's almost 31% of businesses don't measure their return on the investment. When I was listening to that, I kind of tried to make the point where I can kind of understand that things can be difficult to measure, and if you've already spent, as we discussed, sort of 2.2 to 1 in terms of sponsoring, and then kind of telling people about the sponsorship, it can be kind of time consuming and expensive. But kind of through sort of looking at it and trying to go through some resources, I'm kind of changed my mind a little bit, because I can kind of see how the ways that they can do it, and for it to be sort of cost effective. So obviously one of the reasons that you do sponsors from brand visibility. So this can be easily measured. Sort of we're gonna use Budweiser and Pepsi, because the Super Bowl's coming up, and football's my sport, and I can kind of go through this. So kind of Budweiser and Pepsi, they could run some sort of hashtag competition, sort of hashtag us with your mates drinking, and then you may be in to win a prize. So that you can kind of measure a little bit online through sort of social media. Another one's product awareness. So for me, this is kind of the hardest one to measure, or most time-consuming one to measure, because you essentially have to ask people about the product, and then you have to kind of do questionnaires, whatever. Again, improved image. You can kind of, for me, you can kind of do this one perhaps without questioning people, though you probably would have to. But again, through social media, you can kind of get an idea of what people think about the image and about your brand. And again, same with this one is a sort of comments about the brand on social media, and kind of what people are saying about it. Again, it's something that you can measure. Sales, of course, that's kind of done in house. It's all numbers. Generally with this report I read that Pepsi, because they're the sole sponsor of the NFL, drink sponsor, they do see a bump in their sales before the Super Bowl, while Coca-Cola don't. So that right there, that's something that you can measure pretty easily in terms of sales. So, and then lastly, employee retention, which is quite an interesting one. I guess it's one that kind of goes over people's heads. I guess if the company and the brand is good, then you may be able to look at your employee retention and think about how well you are at keeping employees, and what their satisfaction level is like, which again can be done in house, which is you're kind of doing it already, which is kind of time consuming. It doesn't really cost too much as well. So Professor Scott made a point about how in our market here on campus that there was some chocolate bar activations made around the Super Bowl, sort of this stand, and it had I don't eat chocolate, but it had sort of the Super Bowl thing and the chocolate there, and how these so I kind of looked into how these sort of food activations were they kind of worked. And of course the NFL has tons of deals with different brands, and the kind of the culture with the Super Bowl is you kind of get the friends and family around, get the food around, and you kind of sit down for 4 hours watching the game. And this in the bottom left is, you may have seen from 2P91, it's kind of the thing I saw about the second screen. So when people haven't got their eyes on the main screen, or obviously commonly what is a TV, as you see, the fourth and fifth things there, look up people when they're watching, or they tend to do with their second screen, is look up products that are advertised on the show. So all these companies that do advertise in the Super Bowl, even if they're not getting the sort of the eyes that they're looking for on the actual advert, people will still kind of look at that and kind of glance back down to their phone or the device, and then sort of look those things up. So they're almost getting sort of the benefits of both, kind of that direct and raw advertisement, and then people. There's studies to show that people will then also look for those things on their second screen. So here I just wanted to kind of show this sort of real low-key sponsorship and sort of competition through social media, and how, or ways it can sort of benefit them in terms of their brand and their awareness. So EP Sports is a UK brand that provides sport equipment, primarily American football. So they did a competition. Essentially, they were giving out free stuff to players who entered in, who elite players who entered into this competition. And the idea was that the player was supposed to obviously post a picture of them playing, and then get as many people to like and share the post. And if they were to get into the top, I think it was 4 for that year, then those 4 players would then receive free kit. So it's a brilliant little strategy, because they don't have to give out too much for that. Of course, they're giving the kit back, and the kit can be quite expensive. But in terms of the exposure, so what you're getting now is you're getting people liking posts and then sharing it, kind of getting your name out there, and it kind of puts EP Sports in a good light, that they're supporting, for me it was university sports and semi-pro sports in Europe. As you can see, there's a couple of teams there from Germany and in Italy, and how they're supporting that. So this competition does good things for them on multiple levels. So lastly, I kind of want to just highlight the point made in class about, I believe the term was the shotgun approach, and how sponsorship should be sort of tailor-made to each individual deal. So take Microsoft and the NFL. So this is a tailor-made sponsorship. So these little tablets that coaches and players can use on the sideline are tailor-made for the NFL. The Surface, and it's a great deal. Actually, the NFL have just extended a 4-year deal with them, and funnily enough, this has sort of kind of changed the rules, because now on the sideline of an NFL game, coaches aren't allowed to use any other equipment. They're not allowed to have phones. The only thing they can do, if they wanted, is to have they can have a printer, and they can print certain plays, and they can draw on them. So this kind of sponsorship deal is tailor-made the sport into a way such that the NFL have now changed their rules to benefit the sponsorship, which is interesting. I don't know if you'd have to see. I mean, the players, you don't really hear too much about them unless it's bad. Bill Belichick, the head coach of the Patriots, obviously he's regarded as probably one of the best coaches to coach the game. He vocally said that it wasn't the same, and he doesn't use it. He uses paper. So that kind of gives Microsoft a little bad light, but in terms, I think it's quite good for them, because they get tons of exposure. Every time there's a picture of a coach on the TV, you see them holding the tablet, and kind of Microsoft get their name out there. So it's quite interesting how sort of leagues can sort of change and manipulate rules to benefit a sponsorship deal. So thank you for listening. I apologize for this being such a long podcast. Of course, we kind of pushed 2 weeks in together, so I hope you enjoyed it. Hopefully we can just keep things nice, short and sweet for the next coming weeks. And once again, thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you next time.